She smirked. I'm just with you until someone better shows up. I replied, sounds good. Then I started dating her best friend. The voicemail she left after seeing us at her favorite restaurant said it all. Looking back, I should have seen the signs earlier, but sometimes you need someone to spell out exactly how little you mean to them before the truth really hits. It was a Tuesday evening in downtown Seattle, and we were at this rooftop bar overlooking the Sound that Amber had insisted on trying because her Instagram feed needed more elevated content. I was nursing a beer and watching the ferries drift across the dark water when she dropped the bomb with the same casual tone she used to order her overpriced cocktails. You know, Jason, I've been thinking about us, she said, not bothering to look up from her phone where she was swiping through what I now realize was a dating app. I mean, you're fine for now, but you're not really marriage material. You're more like practice. I set down my beer and actually looked at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. Practice for what? I asked, genuinely curious about where this was heading. For when I find my actual soulmate, she said matter-of-factly, finally glancing up at me with those perfectly contoured eyes. Look, if I'm being totally honest, you're maybe a 5 out of 10 on the ambition scale. You work at an aquarium, Jason. That's not exactly CEO material. The casual cruelty of it hit me like cold water, but what struck me more was how rehearsed it sounded, like she'd been practicing this speech. So what am I, then? I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. You're useful, she said with that same infuriating smirk. You split bills, you don't embarrass me at work events, and you're reliable. Think of yourself as my interim solution until I find someone with real potential. She gestured around the expensive bar we were in. Someone who can actually afford places like this without checking their bank account first. I took a long sip of my beer and looked out at the water, processing what she just said. 14 months of what I thought was building something real, and I was apparently just a placeholder keeping her seat warm. Fair enough, I said finally, which clearly wasn't the reaction she expected. Her eyebrows shot up, and for the first time all evening, she put her phone down completely. That's it? You're not going to fight for us or anything? Fight for what? I asked, genuinely confused. You just told me I'm practice. Why would I argue with someone who's actively looking to replace me? She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the gears turning. This wasn't going according to whatever script she had in her head. Most guys would at least try to convince me they're worth keeping around, she said, a note of irritation creeping into her voice. Most guys probably don't get told their interim solutions over cocktails. I finished my beer and signaled the waiter. Besides, if you're that unhappy with a 5 out of 10, you should definitely upgrade. Life's too short. The confusion on her face was almost comical. She'd expected tears, begging, maybe some grand gesture to prove my worth. Instead, she got practical acceptance, and it was clearly throwing her off balance. So that's really it? You're just okay with this? I'm okay with honesty, I said, pulling out my wallet to cover my portion of the bill. Thanks for finally being direct about where I stand. As I stood to leave, she grabbed my arm with a grip that was just a little too tight. Where are you going? I thought we could talk about this more, maybe work on improving your situation. My situation is that I'm practice for your real relationship. What's to improve? I gently extracted my arm from her grip. Enjoy your search, Amber. I hope you find what you're looking for. I walked out of that bar feeling oddly liberated, like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had just been lifted. She'd done me a favor, really. No more wondering why she seemed distracted during conversations about my work, no more pretending not to notice how she'd scroll through her phone when I talked about the coral restoration project I'd been developing. The project she dismissed as playing with fish, but that had actually caught the attention of some major marine conservation organizations. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from her, "You're making a mistake. I was trying to help you become better." I deleted it without responding and drove home to my small apartment, where I spent the evening reviewing research papers and thinking about what I actually wanted from life. It wasn't until the next morning that I realized something that would change everything. I was finally free to be myself, and there was someone who'd always appreciated that version of me more than Amber ever had. 3 days later, I found myself at the coffee shop in the University District where I knew Lily spent her Thursday afternoons tutoring kids from the local community center. I told myself it was coincidence, but honestly, I needed to talk to someone who knew Amber well enough to help me understand what the hell had just happened to my life. Lily Chen was hunched over a small table with two middle schoolers, patiently explaining fractions with the kind of genuine enthusiasm that made me remember why I fell in love with teaching others about marine life in the first place. She'd always been the polar opposite of her roommate. Where Amber commanded attention, Lily earned respect through quiet competence. When she looked up and saw me approaching, her face immediately shifted to concern. "Jason? What are you doing here? Is everything okay?" The kids she was tutoring looked between us curiously, so I waited until she'd finished their session and sent them off with homework assignments and encouraging smiles. Once we were alone, I sat down across from her and just started talking. "Amber told me Tuesday night that I'm her practice boyfriend," I said without preamble. "Apparently I'm a 5 out of 10 on the ambition scale and she's keeping me around until she finds someone with CEO potential." Lily's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips, her eyes widening in what looked like genuine horror. "She said that? Out loud? To your face? Word for word? Called me her interim solution." I rubbed my forehead, still processing it myself. I mean, I knew we weren't perfect, but I thought we were at least real. "Oh my God, Jason." Lily set down her cup with shaking hands. "I am so sorry. That's absolutely horrible, but honestly, it explains so much about the things she's been saying." My stomach dropped. "What things?" Lily looked genuinely uncomfortable, like she was debating whether to open a door that couldn't be closed again. God, this is awful to repeat, but she's been telling our friend group for months that you're too boring for her long term. That you work with fish because you can't handle real responsibility. That you're the kind of guy who peaks in college and never amounts to anything after. Each word hit like a physical blow, but somehow hearing it from Lily made it hurt less, not more. Maybe because her tone was apologetic rather than cruel, or maybe because I could see the genuine anger in her eyes on my behalf. "She said I peaked in college?" I actually laughed, which seemed to surprise both of us. "That's interesting, considering my coral restoration research just got accepted for presentation at the Pacific Marine Science Conference next month." Lily's face lit up in a way that caught me completely off guard. "Wait, seriously? The one in Vancouver? Jason, that's incredible. I've been following marine conservation research since my environmental science minor, and getting into that conference is huge." I stared at her. "You follow marine conservation research? Are you kidding? Ocean acidification and coral bleaching are some of the most critical environmental issues of our generation." She was leaning forward now, her eyes bright with genuine interest. "What's your research focus? Please tell me you're working on temperature resilience or symbiotic algae cultivation." For the first time in months, someone was asking me about my work with actual enthusiasm instead of polite tolerance. "Both, actually. I've been developing a technique for heat-resistant zooxanthellae that could help reef systems survive rising ocean temperatures." "That's revolutionary," Lily breathed. "Do you realize how many reef ecosystems that could save? Jason, this could change everything for coral conservation." I felt something shift in my chest, a warmth I hadn't experienced in so long I'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Here was someone who not only understood what I was working on, but grasped its significance without me having to explain why fish weren't just pretty decorations in tanks. "There's something else," Lily said quietly, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I need to be honest with you about something. I've been anonymously donating to the Coral Restoration Foundation for the past 2 years. It started after I overheard you explaining coral symbiosis to Amber at that house party, and she just rolled her eyes and changed the subject to some reality show." My breath caught. "That was you?" "Those anonymous donations have been helping fund some of my preliminary research." "I hope they might." She smiled, the first genuinely warm expression I'd seen directed at me in months. "I believe in what you're doing, Jason. Always have. And hearing how Amber talks about your work, about you, it makes me sick." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of mutual understanding settling between us. Finally, she spoke again. I know this might sound terrible timing-wise, but would you like to get dinner sometime? Not as revenge against Amber or anything like that, but because I genuinely love to hear more about your research. And because I think you deserve to spend time with someone who sees your value instead of treating you like a consolation prize. I looked at her across that small coffee shop table, this woman who'd been quietly supporting my life's work while my own girlfriend dismissed it as playing with fish, and felt something I hadn't felt in months: hope. I'd really like that, I said. But you should know, Amber's going to lose her mind when she finds out. Lily's smile turned slightly mischievous. Let her. Some people need to learn that treating others as disposable has consequences. I should have known that someone who called me her interim solution would somehow become possessive the moment I stopped being available on demand. The first sign of trouble came exactly 1 week after my coffee shop conversation with Lily, when Amber started blowing up my phone after seeing an Instagram photo of us at an environmental activism meeting. What the hell is this? She texted, along with a screenshot of Lily and me holding protest signs about ocean pollution. Since when do you go to activism meetings? And why is my roommate there? I stared at the message, genuinely baffled by the implied ownership in her tone. Since I care about the environment I study for a living, I replied. And Lily volunteers with 3 different conservation groups. That's not the point, came her immediate response. You're trying to steal my support system. This is pathetic even for you. The irony was staggering. The woman who'd literally told me she was shopping for my replacement was now upset that I'd formed a friendship with someone who shared my interests. But Amber was just getting started. Over the next 2 weeks, she began a campaign that could only be described as aggressively contradictory. She started bringing random men from her CrossFit gym back to the apartment she shared with Lily, making sure to introduce them loudly as potential upgrades from my previous situation. I heard about this through Lily, who came home one night to find some muscle-bound guy named Brad examining their kitchen like he was planning to renovate it. She literally told him he might be living there soon, Lily reported with exhausted frustration. Then she spent an hour explaining why her last boyfriend was too boring and unambitious to deserve someone like her. But while Amber was auditioning replacements, she was simultaneously sending me increasingly unhinged messages demanding I stop manipulating her friend group. When I didn't respond to her texts, she escalated to calling me directly. You think you're so smart, don't you? She said during one particularly memorable 2 a.m. phone call that I answered only because I thought there might be an emergency. Playing the victim, making everyone feel sorry for you. Amber, it's 2 in the morning. What do you want? I want you to stop poisoning people against me. Lily barely talks to me anymore, and I know it's because you're filling her head with lies about our relationship. I sat up in bed, genuinely confused. What lies? I told her exactly what you told me, that I was your practice boyfriend until you found someone better. That's not, you're twisting what I said. I was trying to motivate you to improve yourself. By telling me I wasn't marriage material? By being honest about your limitations. Her voice was getting shriller. Most people would appreciate constructive feedback instead of just giving up like a quitter. The conversation devolved from there, but the pattern was established. Amber had somehow rewritten history in her mind where she was the wronged party trying to help me become a better person, and I was the ungrateful villain who'd manipulated the situation against her. Things escalated further when she discovered through LinkedIn that my coral research had been picked up by National Geographic for a potential documentary feature. Instead of congratulating me, she sent a group text to our mutual friends. Apparently Jason thinks he's some kind of marine biology celebrity now. It's amazing what people will do for attention when they can't handle honest feedback about their dead-end fish job. The dead-end fish job comment made me laugh out loud, especially since 3 major marine research institutions had reached out about collaboration opportunities in the past month. But her behavior was starting to affect Lily, who came home one day looking exhausted and frustrated. She cornered me in the kitchen this morning, Lily told me during our second coffee date. Spent 20 minutes explaining how you're a manipulative loser who's trying to steal her friends because you can't handle rejection. Then she asked if I was stupid enough to fall for your fake sensitive guy act. I'm sorry you're dealing with this, I said, meaning it. Maybe we should cool things down until she calms down. Absolutely not, Lily said firmly. I'm not going to let her control my friendships because she can't handle the consequences of treating people badly. Besides, someone needs to tell you the truth about what she's been saying behind your back for months. That's when I learned the full extent of Amber's character assassination campaign. According to Lily, Amber had been systematically undermining me to anyone who would listen, calling me emotionally stunted, claiming I had no real ambition, and suggesting that I was the kind of guy who would never amount to anything significant. She'd even told people that my marine biology work was just an excuse to avoid getting a real job, and that I lived in a fantasy world where playing with fish counted as a career. The final straw came when I discovered Amber had been stalking my professional social media, screenshotting my posts about research milestones and sending them to people with sarcastic commentary. When I posted about receiving approval for my conference presentation, she shared it to her story with the caption, "Some people really think studying fish makes them important." That night, I blocked her on everything and told Lily I was ready to stop hiding our friendship. "Good," she said, "because I made us dinner reservations for Friday night, and I don't care who sees us." Friday evening arrived with that perfect Seattle autumn weather, crisp air, clear skies, and the kind of golden light that makes the waterfront look like something from a postcard. Lily had chosen Waterfront Bistro, this elegant seafood place with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, and I have to admit, walking in with her felt like stepping into a completely different version of my life. She wore this simple navy dress that somehow made her look both sophisticated and approachable, and when she smiled at something I said about the restaurant's commitment to sustainable fishing practices, I felt that same warmth I'd experienced in the coffee shop but amplified. "You know what I love about this?" she said as we settled into our table by the window. "I can actually talk to you about things that matter without feeling like I'm boring you to death." "You could never bore me," I said, meaning it completely. Amber used to zone out the moment I mentioned anything related to my work. I started thinking maybe I was just bad at explaining things. "You're not bad at explaining things." She was bad at listening to anything that wasn't about her. Lily reached across the table and touched my hand briefly. "Jason, you light up when you talk about marine conservation. It's one of the most attractive things about you." I was about to respond when I saw Lily's expression change, her eyes widening as she looked past me toward the restaurant entrance. "Oh no," she whispered. "What?" I turned around to see Amber standing in the doorway, scanning the dining room with the intensity of a predator hunting prey. She was with some guy I didn't recognize, tall, muscular, probably another CrossFit recruit, but her attention was entirely focused on locating us. "She's here with Derek," Lily said under her breath. "The personal trainer from her gym. They must have been at Sashimi Dreams next door." Amber spotted us within seconds, and the expression that crossed her face was unlike anything I'd ever seen from her. Pure rage mixed with something that looked almost like panic. She said something sharp to Derek, then started walking directly toward our table with the kind of purposeful stride that made other diners instinctively move out of her way. "Jason," she said loudly as she approached, loud enough that conversations at nearby tables started to quiet down. "What an interesting coincidence." "Hi, Amber," I replied calmly, not standing up. "Enjoying your dinner?" "Actually, no. I'm having a terrible evening because my roommate apparently thinks it's appropriate to go after her friends' boyfriends." The word boyfriends hung in the air like a grenade. Several nearby diners were now openly staring, and I could see Derek hovering awkwardly by the hostess station, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. "Ex-boyfriend," Lily corrected quietly but firmly. "You made that very clear." "We never officially broke up," Amber snapped, which was such an obvious lie that I actually laughed. "You told me I was your interim solution until you found someone better. That sounds pretty official to me. I was trying to motivate you to improve yourself, and instead you decided to steal my best friend like some kind of pathetic revenge fantasy." Amber's voice was getting louder, and I could see the restaurant manager starting to move in our direction. "This is my property until I decide otherwise, Lily. Back off." The possessiveness in her voice was genuinely disturbing, but what struck me more was how it revealed exactly what she thought of both of us. I was property to be disposed of at her convenience, and Lily was expected to follow orders like an obedient subordinate. I'm not anyone's property, Amber, I said, standing up now because the situation was clearly escalating beyond reasonable conversation. And neither is Lily. You don't get to treat people like objects and then get upset when they make their own choices. You will never amount to anything more than a fish nerd, she hissed, loud enough that half the restaurant could hear her. You're boring, you're unambitious, and you're delusional if you think anyone could actually love you for who you are instead of what you provide. The cruelty was breathtaking, but what surprised me was that it didn't hurt the way it would have a month ago. Instead, I felt oddly sorry for her. If that's really what you think of me, then I'm glad you're looking for someone else, I said. You deserve to be with someone you actually respect. That's when Derek appeared at her elbow, looking mortified. Amber, maybe we should go back to our table, he said quietly. People are staring. I don't care if people are staring, she screamed, and that's when the manager arrived with 2 servers who were clearly prepared to escort someone out if necessary. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice or leave the premises, the manager said in that politely firm tone that restaurant staff perfect for situations exactly like this. This is harassment, Amber declared, pointing at me and Lily. They're flaunting their relationship to hurt me emotionally. We're having dinner, Lily said calmly. Which is what restaurants are for. The manager looked between all of us, quickly assessing the situation with the practiced eye of someone who'd dealt with plenty of dinner drama. Ma'am, if you're not dining here tonight, I'll have to ask you to leave so our guests can enjoy their meals in peace. Derek took Amber's arm. Come on, let's go. This is embarrassing. Embarrassing? Amber shook him off. What's embarrassing is watching my ex-boyfriend downgrade to my charity case roommate while I'm right here looking like this. She gestured to herself with the kind of dramatic flair that made several diners pull out their phones. Security arrived at that moment, 2 polite but serious-looking men who flanked Amber while the manager explained that she needed to leave immediately. This isn't over, she said as they escorted her toward the exit, Derek trailing behind her with his head down. You'll be crawling back to me within a month, and I won't take you back. I sat back down as the restaurant slowly returned to normal noise levels, other diners gradually resuming their conversations with the kind of excited energy that comes from witnessing quality drama. Well, Lily said, taking a sip of her wine with remarkably steady hands. That went about as well as expected. I'm sorry, I said. This is exactly what I was worried about. Don't apologize. She showed everyone in here exactly who she really is. Lily smiled. Besides, now we don't have to wonder what she'll do when she finds out we're together. We already know. My phone buzzed with a text notification, then another, then what sounded like a continuous stream of incoming messages. I glanced at the screen and saw Amber's name with a message preview that started with, "You have no idea what you just." Don't read those tonight, Lily advised. Let's finish our dinner and talk about literally anything else. Tell me more about your coral restoration project. I put my phone face down on the table and looked at this remarkable woman who just handled public humiliation with more grace than I'd seen Amber display in private conversations. Actually, I'd rather hear about your tutoring program. Those kids at the coffee shop obviously adore you. As we fell back into comfortable conversation about her work with underprivileged students and my research plans, I realized something profound. This was what a real partnership looked like. Someone who supported your dreams instead of diminishing them, who faced challenges with you instead of creating them, who saw your value without needing to be convinced of it. Later that night, I finally checked my phone to find 7 missed calls and a voicemail that was over 7 minutes long. The transcript was too long to read in one sitting, but it started with, "You have absolutely destroyed my life," and ended with something about changing my Netflix password as revenge. I deleted it without listening and went to sleep with Lily's laugh from dinner echoing in my mind, feeling genuinely happy for the first time in months. If I thought Amber's restaurant meltdown was the peak of her revenge campaign, I was seriously underestimating her capacity for creative destruction. The escalation began Monday morning when my supervisor Dr. Martinez called me into his office with a concerned expression that immediately put me on edge. "Jason, we received a rather disturbing call this morning," he said, gesturing for me to sit down. A woman claiming to be a concerned visitor said you made inappropriate comments during a dolphin show presentation last week. I stared at him, genuinely confused. Dr. Martinez, I haven't done any public presentations in over 3 months. I've been focused entirely on my coral research in the lab. He pulled out a notepad with careful handwriting. The caller said you made jokes about marine mammals being easy and suggested that visitors could get personal with the exhibits. She claimed multiple families were offended and left early. The absurdity of it hit me like a wave. That's completely insane. Check the visitor logs, check the presentation schedules. I haven't been near the public areas except to grab lunch from the cafeteria. Dr. Martinez was already pulling up something on his computer. I figured as much, which is why I'm telling you about this instead of writing you up. According to our records, you've been in Lab 3 every day last week working on your temperature resistance trials. Plus, we haven't had any actual complaints from visitors. Any idea who called? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She wouldn't give her name, but she knew enough about our facility layout to sound credible at first. Said she was calling out of concern for our reputation. He closed his laptop and looked at me directly. Jason, is there someone in your personal life who might have reason to cause you professional trouble? I sighed. My ex-girlfriend has been having a difficult time accepting that we broke up. She's been escalating her behavior over the past few weeks. Well, if she calls again, we'll be ready. And Jason? Your work here is exemplary. Don't let someone else's personal issues make you doubt that. The relief was enormous, but it was short-lived. That afternoon, Lily texted me in a panic. Amber called my tutoring program director claiming I've been stealing donation money. Can you believe this? I called her immediately. What exactly did she say? She told Mrs. Rodriguez that she'd heard rumors about missing funds and thought someone should investigate before the program got in trouble. Mrs. Rodriguez was obviously confused because all our finances are handled transparently through the community center's accounting department. Please tell me they didn't take it seriously. Mrs. Rodriguez actually laughed when I explained the situation. Apparently, Amber claimed to be a concerned parent, but couldn't name a single child in our program or answer basic questions about our services. Plus, every donation is tracked and publicly reported. I felt a surge of admiration for Mrs. Rodriguez's common sense, but also growing concern about how far Amber was willing to take this campaign. Lily, I'm worried she's going to keep escalating. Maybe we should. Don't you dare suggest we stop seeing each other because of her tantrums, Lily interrupted firmly. I'm not going to let her control my life through intimidation. But Amber was just getting warmed up. The next phase of her campaign involved recruiting her mother, Patricia, who apparently shared her daughter's flair for dramatic overreach. Patricia began showing up at the aquarium during peak visitor hours, positioning herself in the lobby with a large purse and the kind of aggrieved expression that suggested she was prepared to share her opinions with anyone who would listen. Excuse me, I overheard her telling a family with young children during my lunch break. I feel obligated to warn you about one of their marine biologists. He's a homewrecker who seduces innocent women with fake facts about sea life. The father looked genuinely confused. Which marine biologist? Jason Crawford. Tall, brown hair, works with the coral exhibits. He broke up my daughter's happy relationship by filling her roommate's head with lies about ocean conservation. I watched from a distance as the family exchanged glances that clearly said they thought Patricia was having some kind of mental health episode. Ma'am, the mother said politely, we're just here to see the fish with our kids. That's exactly what he wants you to think. Patricia continued, pulling out her phone. Let me show you some photos of the damage he's caused to my poor daughter's emotional well-being. The family quickly excused themselves and hurried toward the jellyfish exhibit, but Patricia wasn't deterred. She simply moved on to the next group of visitors, a pair of college students who were taking selfies near the touch tank. Be very careful around the marine biology staff, she warned them. Especially the coral researcher. He uses his scientific credentials to manipulate vulnerable women. One of the college students looked up from her phone with interest. Wait, are you talking about Jason Crawford? He's like a legend in our marine biology program. His research on heat-resistant zooxanthellae is revolutionary. Patricia's expression faltered. Well, yes, but, oh my God, is he here today? The other student asked excitedly. Professor Williams showed us his preliminary data last week. If this technique works, it could save reef systems worldwide. He's manipulative, Patricia insisted weakly. The manipulation is called peer-reviewed scientific research, the first student said with barely concealed eye rolling. Ma'am, are you feeling okay? Security eventually escorted Patricia out, but not before she'd managed to approach at least a dozen visitor groups with her warnings about my dangerous influence over women through marine biology education. The aquarium director was less amused than Dr. Martinez had been. This is getting ridiculous, Jason, she said during our meeting that afternoon. We can't have visitors being harassed by someone with a personal grudge against our staff. I understand completely. What can I do to help resolve this? For starters, we're banning her from the premises. We've got her on security footage, so if she comes back, we'll have her arrested for trespassing. She paused. But honestly, this kind of harassment could escalate. Have you considered getting a restraining order? The suggestion sobered me. Was this really my life now? Getting legal protection from someone I'd dated for over a year? But Amber wasn't finished with her character assassination campaign. Her final masterstroke was creating fake Yelp reviews for the aquarium, each one claiming that I provided inaccurate information during educational programs and made visitors uncomfortable with inappropriate comments. Terrible experience, read one review. The marine biologist Jason gave completely wrong information about shark behavior and then hit on my teenage daughter. Management did nothing when I complained. Another claimed, avoid the coral exhibit. The researcher there spreads false information about climate change and gets aggressive when visitors ask legitimate questions. Very unprofessional. The reviews were so obviously fake and contradictory that they backfired spectacularly. The aquarium's PR team not only had them removed but issued a public statement defending their staff's scientific credentials and educational standards. Better yet, the controversy actually drew attention to my research, with several legitimate marine biology websites picking up the story as an example of how online harassment campaigns can target scientists doing important environmental work. Congratulations, Dr. Martinez told me with obvious amusement. Your ex-girlfriend just accidentally gave you more professional publicity than our entire marketing budget could have managed. I had to laugh. Amber's campaign to destroy my reputation had instead highlighted my work to a much broader audience than I'd ever reached before. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well, especially when your enemies insist on destroying themselves in the process. After her solo campaign failed so spectacularly, Amber decided she needed reinforcements. Her brilliant strategy involved contacting all her ex-boyfriends to form what she dramatically called a Justice League against me, apparently convinced that her charm offensive would unite them in righteous anger about how I'd wronged her. The group chat screenshots that Derek forwarded to me were absolutely priceless. Hey guys, her initial message read, I know we all have history, but I need your help with a serious situation. My ex Jason has been spreading lies about me and manipulating my friends. As men who cared about me, I hope you can help me set the record straight. The first response came from Marcus, who she'd dated 2 years ago. Wait, didn't you dump all of us for not being ambitious enough? And now you want our help? Then came Tyler's contribution. Amber, you literally told me I was practice for your real relationship and that I should be grateful for the experience. Why would I help you with anything? But the real gold mine was when Brad, the CrossFit trainer from a few months back, chimed in. Hold up, she told each of us we were the love of her life? Because I have screenshots where she called me her soulmate while apparently dating 3 other guys. The group chat descended into chaos as her ex-boyfriends compared notes and realized they'd all been subjected to identical manipulation tactics. Marcus shared screenshots of Amber calling him the most amazing man I've ever met, while simultaneously posting about being single and focusing on myself. Tyler revealed that she'd asked him to co-sign a car loan, then dumped him the week after he declined. Brad disclosed that she'd expected him to pay for her gym membership, personal training sessions, and protein supplements because supporting your girlfriend's fitness goals is what real men do. The coup de grace came when someone named Kevin joined the chat. "Are you guys talking about Amber Chin?" he wrote. "Blonde, works in real estate marketing, has a roommate named Lily? Because she tried to get me fired from my teaching job last year when I wouldn't lend her money for a vacation." The group chat dissolved within hours, but not before Derek reached out to me personally to apologize. "Dude, I am so sorry about that restaurant thing," he texted. "I had no idea what I was getting into with her. She made me pay for a $300 dinner, then spent the entire time criticizing my conversation skills and telling me my personal training career lacked real potential." "No worries," I replied. "Live and learn, right?" "Seriously though, you dodged a bullet. She showed me these texts she was sending you, calling you pathetic and boring, then 5 minutes later she was asking if I thought she could get you back." The irony was staggering, but the best part was yet to come. 2 other exes actually reached out to warn me about Amber's patterns. Marcus called me directly. "Listen man, I don't know you, but Amber has this thing where she tries to destroy guys who don't crawl back to her begging. She did it to Tyler, tried to do it to me. Just watch yourself." "What did she do to Tyler?" I asked, genuinely curious about the scope of her revenge campaigns. "Called his boss claiming he was stealing from the register, tried to get him evicted by telling his landlord he was dealing drugs, posted fake reviews for his band's performances. The woman is unhinged when she doesn't get her way." The picture that emerged from these conversations was deeply disturbing but also strangely validating. I wasn't dealing with someone having a normal reaction to a breakup. I was dealing with someone who had a documented pattern of trying to destroy anyone who didn't submit to her control. But Amber's recruitment strategy had one final, spectacular backfire. At 3 a.m. on a Tuesday night, she showed up outside what she thought was my apartment building with a megaphone, apparently planning to publicly shame me into crawling back to her. The problem was she'd gotten the address wrong and was actually harassing a retired couple who lived 2 blocks away from me. "Jason Crawford, you pathetic coward," she screamed into the megaphone. "Come out here and face me like a man. You can't hide from your mistakes forever." Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, both in their 70s, called the police after 20 minutes of Amber ranting about my supposed crimes against her emotional well-being. When the officers arrived, they found her in full dramatic breakdown mode, sobbing about how I'd stolen her best friend and ruined her life. "Ma'am, do you know what building this is?" one officer asked patiently. "This is 1247 Pine Street. Jason Crawford lives at 1247 Pine Street." "No ma'am, this is 1274 Pine Street. And the residents here are Herbert and Dolores Peterson, who are both 73 years old and would very much like to sleep." The officers gave her a trespassing warning and suggested she might benefit from speaking to a counselor about healthy ways to process relationship endings. Mrs. Peterson later told me the whole story when I ran into her at the grocery store. "That poor girl seemed very troubled," she said with genuine sympathy. "She kept insisting that her ex-boyfriend was hiding inside our apartment, even after we explained that we've been married 51 years and definitely don't have any marine biologists living with us." "I'm sorry you had to deal with that," I told her. "She's been having trouble accepting that our relationship ended." "Oh, you're the marine biologist. Herbert was so impressed when the police mentioned your work with coral reefs. He's been following ocean conservation since he retired from the Coast Guard." Mrs. Peterson smiled. "He said anyone doing that kind of important research must be a good person, and that young woman was clearly the problem in that relationship." I walked away from that conversation feeling oddly grateful to Amber for inadvertently introducing me to my neighbors, who turned out to be delightful people with fascinating stories about their Coast Guard years. Her campaign to humiliate me had instead expanded my social circle and reinforced my professional reputation. It was becoming a pattern. The harder she tried to destroy my life, the more she accidentally improved it. The Pacific Marine Science Conference in Vancouver turned out to be the perfect culmination of everything that had happened over the past few months. I'd been nervous about presenting my coral restoration research to some of the world's leading oceanographers, but having Lily there in the front row, genuinely excited about my work, gave me a confidence I'd never felt during my relationship with Amber. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, clicking to my first slide showing bleached coral reefs. What you're seeing here represents one of the most critical environmental challenges of our time. But today, I want to show you a technique that could help these ecosystems not just survive rising ocean temperatures, but actually thrive in them. The presentation went flawlessly. Questions from the audience were thoughtful and engaged. Several researchers approached me afterward about collaboration opportunities, and Dr. Sarah Chen from the Scripps Institution, no relation to Lily, invited me to present my findings at their summer symposium. I was still buzzing with excitement when Lily and I headed to the reception, where she was practically glowing with pride. "Jason, do you realize what just happened in there?" she said, squeezing my arm. "You just presented research that could revolutionize coral conservation to the most important conference in marine science. This is incredible. I couldn't have done it without your support," I told her honestly. "Having someone who actually believes in my work makes all the difference." That's when I saw the commotion near the registration desk. Amber had somehow talked her way into the conference despite having no scientific credentials or conference registration, wearing a cocktail dress that was completely inappropriate for an academic setting. She was arguing with security while gesturing wildly toward the main auditorium. "I need to get in there," she was saying loudly enough for half the reception to hear. "My boyfriend is presenting fraudulent research, and these people need to know the truth about him." "Ma'am, we've already explained that this is a closed conference for registered attendees only," the security guard replied with professional patience. "Do you have credentials in marine science?" "I don't need credentials to expose a fraud." Amber spotted me across the room and her voice got even louder. "There he is. Jason Crawford is a fake scientist who manipulates women with lies about saving the ocean." The reception fell silent as dozens of marine researchers turned to stare at this woman claiming their colleague was a fraud. Dr. Martinez, who'd flown in specifically to see my presentation, approached Amber with the kind of stern expression he usually reserved for graduate students who falsified data. "Excuse me, miss, but I'm Dr. Martinez, Jason's supervisor at the Seattle Aquarium. Are you claiming that his peer-reviewed research contains fraudulent data?" "I'm claiming he's a manipulative liar who uses his job to trick innocent women," Amber declared, apparently not recognizing that she was essentially calling the entire conference attendees gullible for taking my research seriously. His so-called groundbreaking technique is just him playing with fish in a lab. The crowd's reaction was immediate and brutal. Dr. Chen from Scripps stepped forward. "Ma'am, I've reviewed Mr. Crawford's methodology extensively. His zooxanthellae cultivation technique represents a genuine breakthrough in coral restoration science." Another researcher added, "His temperature resistance trials have been replicated by 3 independent laboratories. The results are scientifically sound and extremely promising." But Amber was past the point of rational thinking. She pushed past security toward the microphone that was set up for conference announcements. "These people don't know the real Jason Crawford," she shouted, grabbing for the mic. "He's a boring, unambitious fish nerd who will never amount to anything significant." That's when she tripped over the microphone cord in her inappropriate heels and went tumbling off the small presentation platform, landing in an undignified heap while her cocktail dress rode up and her purse scattered its contents across the floor. The silence was deafening. Here was a woman who just called a roomful of marine scientists gullible for respecting research she clearly didn't understand, then literally fallen off a stage while trying to humiliate the presenter they just applauded. Security helped her to her feet and escorted her out while she continued ranting about how everyone was being fooled by my fake sensitive guy act. The reception buzz returned to normal within minutes, but several people approached me to apologize for what they'd witnessed. "Colleague," Dr. Chen said with obvious amusement, "I've been to hundreds of these conferences, and that was definitely a first. Is she always that dramatic?" "Only when she's not getting what she wants," I replied. Which apparently includes having her opinions about marine science taken seriously by actual marine scientists. The story of Amber's conference crash became legendary within the marine biology community. Someone had filmed her falling off the platform, and it became a viral social media moment that actually brought more attention to coral conservation research than any academic presentation could have achieved alone. 6 months later, Lily and I moved into a beautiful coastal apartment in Bellingham, where I'd accepted a position with Western Washington University's Marine Research Institute. My coral restoration technique was being implemented in reef systems across the Pacific, and the documentary featuring my work had been picked up by National Geographic. Amber, according to our mutual friends, had relocated to Portland where she'd reinvented herself as a relationship wellness coach, teaching workshops about releasing toxic attachments and recognizing your true worth. The irony was so perfect I almost felt bad about laughing. Almost. The final piece of closure came when I received an email from Dr. Chen 6 months after the conference. Jason, I wanted you to know that your research has been selected for our institute's annual Innovation Award. The selection committee specifically mentioned how your work demonstrates the importance of persevering through both professional and personal challenges to make meaningful scientific contributions. I showed the email to Lily over breakfast in our new apartment, where we could see the ocean from our kitchen window. You know what's funny? She said, sipping her coffee. Amber was right about one thing. You really are just a fish nerd. Is that a problem? I asked with mock concern. Are you kidding? I fell in love with a fish nerd who's helping save the world's coral reefs. That's exactly the kind of boring, unambitious guy I want to spend my life with. As I watched the morning sun reflect off the water and planned another day of research that might help preserve ocean ecosystems for future generations, I realized that Amber had accidentally given me the greatest gift possible. By showing me exactly what it felt like to be undervalued and dismissed, she'd helped me recognize and appreciate someone who saw my true worth. Sometimes the best revenge really is just living well, especially when your former tormentor inadvertently helps you build a better life than you ever imagined possible.